Good evening, I'm Susan Mulholland, and welcome to Art Beat. Tonight we're going to pay a visit with Raymond Granville Barger, a poet-sculptor who was a long-time resident of Bucks County, and recently he returned. And then we'll go to a very unique gallery in New Hope, Pennsylvania. And finally, we'll speak with a young abstract artist and furniture maker, Mark Kaufman. But first, come with me and we'll meet Raymond. I recently spent a pleasant afternoon with sculptor-poet Raymond Granville Barger, a vital 83-year-old man who had just flown in from California to help locate the new site for his sculpture, Transition. We met in a warehouse where his sculpture will be stored until its unveiling at the James Michener Art Center. We discussed the sculpture, its origins, and its design.
I designed this thinking that it was introduction. You'll notice the bottom parts of it is all soft and round.
Yes.
And if you're underneath it looking up, that's what the people are who walks beneath it. But the top side is sharp-lined and angular, and that's what the buildings are up above. So it introduces the people to the steel and glass structure. It introduces one to the other. It has some of the parts of both. That's Transition.
On a blustery day in January 1965, Transition, Raymond's 3-ton bronze sculpture, was hoisted into place at the J.C. Penney building on the Avenue of the Americas in New York City. Now it has the beautiful patina of an old coin, and it will be reclaimed, rededicated, and donated to the people of Bucks County. Because the present owners of the building are going to destroy the sculpture area, Mr. Barger was contacted to see if he could find a home for his sculpture.
Didn't know how to take it apart. And they had to depend on me. And I said, well, what are you going to do with it? They said, we don't know. I said, well, give it to me. And after 3 months of carrying on and going, all of a sudden they said, it's yours if you can get it away on a certain day.
And this is where your good friends came to your rescue.
Yes. So I called up the Chamber of Commerce and said, I've got that sculpture 25 feet long and weighs 6,000 pounds. Would you like to have it in Bucks County? Because I lived there for 23 years. They said, would we like to have it? And then they called back and said, the director knows it and loves it. And
As we spoke with Raymond later in the afternoon, he told us more about the process he used constructing Transition.
I did it in a shipyard. And I made a keel, just like a sailboat. I made ribs, just like a sailboat. And I planked the whole thing, just like wooden planks. Only there were 7/8 of an inch bronze strips, and they were welded. Now, there are over 6,000 linear feet of those 7/8 inch strips in that, more than a mile, in that one piece of sculpture. And they're welded internally with welds about this long, and then you have to skip, because if you don't, that warps it. But that's the right kind of weld to make also. So the sculpture was made and completed, and it looked like a boat. And so when I made the bronze one, I rented a space in a shipyard and did it there, because they also have cranes to lift it around. So everything worked just fine.
Mr. Barger never travels without his portfolio, which, as you can see, is evidence of his vast creative talents. He likes to do things on a very grand scale. Here we see a picture of him with a tiny sculpture in his hand. And next, we see the sculpture with a very tiny Raymond Barger. When I met with Raymond, he was wearing quite an interesting medal, which has quite an interesting story.
This is a title, and it's called Cavaliere, and it means that I can ride a horse when most of you have to walk, something like that. It's an ancient thing. It's like an earl or a duke or a cavalier in French, but it's in Italy, and it's in the Republic of San Marino, a little mountaintop republic. I learned from the ambassador, who got to be my friend, the American ambassador to all of Italy, who was stationed in Rome. I had the Prix de Rome, and I had my own studio. And on one day a week in the afternoon, I'd have a little party, and he came all the time. And he liked what I was doing. And so he said, well, the San Marino wants a bust of Lincoln. They've been wanting one ever since Lincoln was president, and they've never gotten one yet. So that excited me. So I was sent to New York and Washington and got some photographs, and I made a bust of Lincoln by sketches, and then I made a plastic clay model. And this ambassador said, when that's finished, I'll make the dedication speech. And so things just went on like that. Now, Lincoln wrote to San Marino when he was president, said, although your nation is small, it is nonetheless one of the most honored in all history. You are the oldest republic on earth, and these United States of which I am president is the youngest. We salute you, like that. Well, ever since that, they've got to have one. So I have money from the scholarship, so I made one and gave it to them. And they dedicated on their 300th birthday in 1937. They were 300 years old. The United States is still only 212 years old now. That was 50-some years ago. So you can see it tied in there pretty good. Now they gave me they made Lincoln an honorary citizen. So they made me an honorary citizen too. But because my gift was positive and in 3 dimensions, they also gave me a title, Cavaliere.
Mr. Barger feels his most important work is the equality sculpture. It is a piece which consists of 2 open, centered squares which fit together to symbolize 2 people with their arms interlocked. At one time, the National Park Service approved plans for the sculpture to stand on the banks of the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. However, this has not been carried through and has been a big disappointment for Raymond. A few of Raymond's sculptures can be found in and around Bucks County. One is a giant hand, which stands outside the Lisbon Contractors Building in Danborough, Pennsylvania. Another can be found at the James A. Michener branch of the Bucks County Library in Quakertown. For the past 20 years, Mr. Barger has had a unique way of signing his sculptures and his poetry.
This is a trademark. It's copyrighted. That's an R backwards and a B forward. And it's straight lines. And I can do it with a chisel on my sculpture, and I do it like this on my poetry. Now the date, this is the United States. First I'll locate where I am. USA, that's my country. And the year, as of today, is 2/12. And the month is the 8th month. And the 11th day. Now, many people don't understand what that is, so I will explain it, but I'll just show you one thing here. If I put USA and put 1989 under it, that is so false. It's impossible, it's impractical, and it doesn't make any sense, because There was no United States 1,989 years ago. There was a United States 212 years ago, and on the 4th of July, the nation, in the month of July, the nation was born, and on the 4th of July is what we celebrated for. Now, that was 212 years ago, and July is the birthday of the nation. So July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February is the 8th month, and that's what I have there, and the 11th day. And that's the day that the sculpture left New York City and arrived to Bucks County, its new home.
Raymond wrote a poem which relates to transition and its new home at the James A. Michener Art Center.
Transition. Once these strong prison walls contained breakers of laws, victims of poor education. In dull class students rot, low-paid tutors teach not in this world's wealthiest nation. Now these same walls contain our culture's art remains, record Bucks County's history. This lesson has been learned. We invite art's return to enhance future's destiny. Transition means to change. Only better remains. Positive thoughts have potential. Donors' motive aspire. Ideals to reach higher. Creative minds are essential. Raymond Granville Barger, sculptor, poet, USA 212-811.